Over the last 15 years, I've helped thousands of clients successfully lose weight. And after guiding so many people through this process as a nutrition coach, I've discovered their success comes down to one simple formula. And I'm going to teach you it today, and here's my promise. Watch until the end of this video and you'll be able to guide any client to weight loss success. Here's what it looks like. So success equals results, which is going to be a combination of efficacy over effectiveness, which is going to be simplicity times structure times environment, all added to the psychology factor, drive, and accountability. Let me break this down. The success of a diet, meaning does someone get the desired result, the payoff of what they wanted for starting the diet, all comes down to the following formula. And it starts with results. And results come from doing what actually works, which in sciencey terms, they're gonna call this efficacy, which is going to be the scientific principle of how the approach works. But this may not work if it's too hard to follow, which is the effectiveness of the diet. Effectiveness isn't if something will work, it's if the diet actually works because someone can stick to it, which is more likely to happen if it's simple to follow, there's a structure that makes it easy to follow, and the environment they live and eat in caters to following it. This is what determines if someone will get a result. But there are some other factors that go into the diet that we can't ignore, namely the mindset that goes into following the diet. Are they bought into trying it and doing the work? And does it work fast enough that they want it to continue? Now, all this is made easier if there is another bigger reason to follow it. I like to call this drive. Is the pain of what they are currently experiencing or what they're currently going through, making it necessary to do something, and that something is following the diet so they actually stick with it? Or do they have a North Star, like the drive to get off medication or the drive to impress someone with the changes, guiding them to make this process easier? Lastly, there's the accountability component that we can't ignore. If they have someone else they're doing it with, like a partner or a friend, there's that human component that makes it easier to follow. And even better, if someone is coaching them through it, making it easier to focus, removing barriers, it will all lead to more success. And that's the formula. It explains why some people get amazing results doing something that shouldn't work at all, and why others can't really seem to get anywhere despite trying everything, getting help, hiring a coach, and doing something that is fundamentally sound on paper. But it's not just enough to know these variables, you need to be able to understand them and apply them as well. So let's go through them one by one with some examples too. Starting with the results part, especially this first component, which is number one, efficacy. The scientist in me loves this section, and it's for good reason. Efficacy is all about the underlying scientific principles of why something works. For fat loss, you lose fat tissue by being in a caloric deficit. There's no getting around that. So we need to think, does the approach that someone is trying to do, does it consistently put them in a calorie deficit? The reason why a dietary approach like keto will work for fat loss in some situations isn't because the person's in ketosis or the absence of carbs. If someone gets leaner eating that way, it's because it consistently put them in a calorie deficit, which is why I'm such a firm advocate of tracking-based approaches. Because food choices don't matter as much as controlling for energy does, and getting closer to the numbers that provide energy in the food and the drink we consume for it to work. And this is why fat loss works. That doesn't make it easy or that you can just follow a calorie deficit. It doesn't work like that, but it's the physical underpinning. Now let's talk about what makes this scientific idea somewhat easier to follow, which is number two, effectiveness. A few months ago, I came across this concept in a Peter Attia video that completely verbalized and explained everything I've been trying to put my finger on for the last 10 years. And it's the reason why nutrition coaching has been wildly successful. And it's because there's a difference between efficacy and effectiveness. Efficacy, which we just touched upon, is how something works. Effectiveness is, will it work? Will someone do it enough to consistently produce a result? You see, something could work in theory and on paper be the best plan, but if someone isn't going to follow it and they don't execute on it, was it the best plan? Because if they can't follow it, it's not going to be effective at all. If you think about some of the public policy interventions that happened during the pandemic, you'll know that some of them were quite easy to follow, whereas there's other ones that were a bit more complicated that should have worked in theory, but no one followed them. For something to work, it can't just happen in theory, it needs to be applied. And that's where nutrition coaches come in. They help people apply these theories through action. And there are three aspects that make it more likely that someone will follow something. And they are simplicity, structure, environment. Now, the first two can be a bit contradictory. Essentially, the more simple something is to follow, the more likely it is to be followed. This is why say whatever you want to say about meal plans that demonize a specific food or food ingredient or macronutrient, or even an exact meal plan that tells someone specifically and exactly what to eat. When it's very clear what someone needs to do, they have an easier time following it, because it's so black and white, pending they are bought in and motivated, which we're gonna touch on next. Think about the carnivore diet for a second. All you're supposed to eat on the carnivore diet is meat and other animal products. That eliminates a lot of things that you won't be eating, which essentially makes the diet easier to follow. The more complex a diet gets, the more tough it is to execute. There are some versions of the carnivore diet that are actually abbreviated BBBE, which is beef, butter, bacon, and eggs. This is all you're eating. Do I think you should do this? No, I don't, but it's pretty clear what needs to be followed. And many strict diets do this successfully, making it one of the only advantages of that type of approach. But it is an advantage, so it shouldn't be overlooked. Conversely though, in some cases, for the diet to be successful, it's going to need to have some structure. It needs to control for the things that produce weight loss. And although fad diets can be simple, they also lack depth. Although the satiety of meat and animal fat is quite high, you can still overeat on these foods. And you don't hear about this often because the type of people that publicly verbalize their experiences on these diets, they tend to overlook the negative. But the same thing can be said about the lack of structure in other descriptive diets. Even the quote unquote healthier ones like the Mediterranean diet. They can make suggestions on better or worse food choices, but if they lack the structure to tell you how much of it to eat and when, they don't have that depth and therefore can be less successful. This is where flexible dieting or tracking based approaches really shine, because they put a more explicit structure around the checks and balances that produce success, like calories and macronutrients. So for a diet to be successful, it needs to be simple enough to execute, but also supply the structure and depth to control for what matters the most. But there's also this big environmental component, which is how much of a change is this going to be for this person to follow? If this goes against what their entire social circle does and agrees with, will they be able to follow it? And do they need to eat entirely different from their entire family, or avoid all the foods that are currently in their pantry? And are they willing to do that? When the approach introduces too much friction, it will wear someone down. And willpower is very much a finite resource. There is only so much we can budget for these type of decisions. And that's the first part of this equation. So we have results coming from efficacy, does it work, divided by will the person actually do it, which is determined by how hard it is to do, the control it has over what matters, and what it requires of the person to change. Now we move on to some of the more social and mindset aspects, which can really make or break someone's success. The first one being this psychology factor. And this is a bit of a wild card, because if someone thinks something is going to work, it is much more likely to work. And that's because when they think it'll work, number one, they're much more likely to stick with it. But also number two, they're much more likely to work hard. Because when we believe things will get better, they do tend to get better. And this isn't some woo-woo nonsense. It's because when we think things will get better, we're more likely to do the work to make them better. And this has explained some of the biggest mysteries in my nutrition coaching career. The situations that had no business working, but they did actually work because the client believed in them. I've had people try to convince me that they needed very low carbohydrate diets to succeed. And we tried higher carbohydrates first, and it didn't work. Then lo and behold, we dropped the carbs. With everything else being equal, their weight drops. Or elite athletes wanting to do very complex calorie cycling protocols. Not necessary in my opinion, but it ended up being the only thing that worked for them. I don't like to be wrong, but when someone is determined to do something, they're doing it with or without me, and I'm not going to be the thing that stands in the way of their success. The mindset and belief that something is going to work, it makes a big difference. But we also have this drive and North Star concept. When the pain of the situation that someone is currently in is much greater than what it takes to solve it, they're going to do the work. And that's usually where a lot of this internal motivation comes from. But when they also have something bigger than themselves to work towards, like watching their kids grow up or avenging an ex, they're much more likely to stick with it. Sometimes it's not about what they're doing, but about the why. Lastly, accountability is a huge determinant of success. Did you know that when you tell someone about your goals, they're twice as likely to happen? And this number actually goes up further when that person actually joins you in the process. And even better, having an expert to guide you in that process. which is how I've made my entire living in health and fitness. People don't need more knowledge. They're going to pay you for the accountability and the application. This is where all the results and money are made. And that's going to be the difference maker in 90% of cases. And a good nutrition coach is going to help you remove distractions and focus all your energy into what matters. And that's it, folks. After working in this space for 15 years and successfully coaching thousands of people to weight loss success, that is the exact formula that you need to succeed in a diet. If you learned something new today, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. And as great as all those tips are, if you're really serious about starting a nutrition coaching business, the next thing I'm gonna have you do is check out this video I've linked up right here, where I break down the top 10 fat burning foods that all my clients eat. So make sure to check it out right now, and I'll see you in the next video.